today, I am so excited to bring on our show today, Cindy Mann. Cindy Mann is the former head of school for Padua Academy, and after 40 years in education, Cindy retired in 2019 of, like I said, Padua Academy, which is an all-girls private school in Wilmington. And Padua's motto is spirituality, scholarship, service, and sisterhood. Cindy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Well, first, before I get into an article that I stumbled upon, which is why I actually reached out to you, because I actually never met you and didn't know you before I invited you on this podcast. Why don't you take me and my listeners back to where did your career all start? Did you always want to be in education? Were you a former teacher? Can you just walk us down that road for a few minutes?
Sure. It's pretty interesting when you think about it and who the people are in your life that sort of send you down a certain path. I wanted to be a lawyer, and I really wanted to be a lawyer. And my mother died when I was 17. And so this nun, a group of nuns, sort of became my mothers. And because I was an only child, my father was a little distant. So they embraced me. And so Sister Beata said to me, I had just graduated from high school, and she said, well, you can come here and teach kindergarten and then go to college in the afternoon. I said, Sister, I'm an only child. I know absolutely nothing about children. And frankly, I don't really like them. So my path is law. And she said, your path right now is being with me. So you stay with us, not in the convent, but you hang around us and you and teach kindergarten for me. Well, I did, because you don't say no to a nun. And so I said, okay, sister, I will, for a year. And I fell in love with those little children. And I fell in love with every day teaching them. She didn't tell me what to teach. There was no curriculum. There was no district telling me. So I was an 18-year-old with all these. In fact, one of the 8th grade boys asked me if I would eat lunch with him, sit beside him in the cafeteria. I said, I'm a teacher. So anyway, but that started me down this path of education. And I have never, ever looked back. She was inspired. I don't know what she was, but she led me down the right path. And then if you hear a dog in the background, that's my dog Guinness. She'll be going outside in just a second, I hope.
No problem.
Then I went on to college and I went into education. And then I got a real calling to go into special education. And because I just always figured I could teach kids if I only had the avenue to reach their brains, if I only, could design educational materials. And so that's what I did. I started out for a year teaching, and all the titles of these programs have changed now, but I taught children with learning disabilities and low intellect. And I did that for a year, and then I crossed over into emotionally handicapped children. And that is where I stayed for a long time. I became a mother to kids that didn't have parents. They became part of my family. And this was in a time when you could take kids home with you because they've earned so many points during the week. And Friday nights, we'd always, for those that earned the points, would be able to have a cookout at my house. And
I love that.
So one time we were all at the table, and my son, who was in the 3rd or 4th grade at that time, one of the boys, he reached over one of the boys to get ketchup. And the kid hit him on the hand and said, in this family, we pass things. And Jonathan said, you've gone too far, Mom. I mean, you've gone too far. This is taking your work too much. Anyway, I still pray for those boys. They had no one but me, and they had no one to advocate for them at that time because it was not a popular field. And the principals, and they just wanted to put me out in a mobile unit somewhere. And so they didn't hear from me. And so I did my thing. I taught. And that is, and we had kids from kindergarten through 8th grade in one room.
Wow.
And we had multiple problems. And so I might have a little child in kindergarten that just wasn't developing language with an 8th grader who had long developed every curse word in modern world. And so it was interesting. It was, but I learned a love and an acceptance that I don't think I could have ever learned in another environment. And it was a wonderful time. So then eventually after 10 years, I sort of burned out, and we moved, and it was a perfect time for me to get into regular education. And I thought, boy, this is going to be a dream come true, regular education. And I was in a little Catholic school, and so we did a lot of fun things. The best compliment I ever got from any child or parent is from this little boy. His name was Paul, and he saw me later as an adult, and he said, Mrs. Mann, I got to tell you, nobody loved me like you. I never had a teacher that liked me.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh.
Said, Paul, look at the man you've turned into. You're wonderful. Wow. But anyway, so you have those stories as teachers that absolutely go straight to your heart. And that's what keeps you in the classroom, not the, paperwork,
all the other things you have to do
that goes along
like
with.
We always feel like they just get more and more piled on top, and nothing is being taken off the plate. Let's face it.
So I was very content being a teacher. I taught 7th and 8th grade math and language arts. I taught and then I taught 6th grade some, and then I taught kindergarten. We moved again, and I got a job as a kindergarten teacher. And I thought, piece of cake, no problem. And, what do? I read a book, they play a little bit, we go outside, we come back, take a nap, it's over.
I got this,
no problem, And so the first day, it became nap time, and I said, okay. One little girl said, can we take our shoes off? I said, absolutely, take your shoes off, get comfortable. And so 25 kids took their shoes off. I never knew I would have to tie 25 pairs of shoes.
Oh my goodness.
And that took at least an hour. And anyway, but fun. Then this principal, who was a priest, because these were Catholic schools. I started out in public and then migrated to Catholic, said, you'd be a good principal. And I said, are you on, you've been drinking a little too much altar wine. Are you kidding me? And he said, no, I mean it. Why don't you be our principal? Because I don't think this woman's going to last. I said, well, okay. And so I became a principal.
Get out.
And
did you even have to interview?
I didn't have to do anything.
Oh my goodness. And then when did you start? How soon did they start you?
They started me
next year.
That was during the summer.
Okay, yeah.
It was in the fall, but we were in the middle of building a new school, just like North Star. So
K-8, or how did they do that back then? What is it,
what?
was it an elementary, middle, or high,
It
or
was
all?
elementary. It was
Elementary.
elementary, kindergarten through 8th grade.
Okay, yeah.
That's the way we.
And where was this? What state?
This was in Florida,
Okay.
Clearwater, Florida.
Clearwater. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
called Guardian Angels. It's still a wonderful school.
Oh my
And
goodness.
but we had a faculty that was ready to try something new.
Oh, okay.
And we had parents that were stellar. These were wonderful men and women. And so we all got in it together. It was a group project. And we said the best thing we can teach these kids is the love of reading. And so it was not unusual to see kids lined up to get in the cars in the afternoon, sitting down reading a book.
Oh, I love that.
I know, it was wonderful. And then, of course, we made the move here. And
to Delaware.
Okay. And so then I decided, well, I didn't want to be a principal anymore. I'll go back being a teacher. But then I got this job as a principal in this little school on 3rd and Van Buren Street in the inner city part of
Wilmington.
And so it just went on from there. But that was a whole teaching experience for me. I learned different coping. I learned how to help kids learn how to dream in a dreamless society.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is very powerful, and it was very hard to do. Anyway, so I still am in contact with those kids, and now they're parents and everything. So another fabulous time. Then I became the assistant superintendent for the diocese, but that was way too much office work and not enough time with the kids or the parents. So I ditched that and became the principal for Padua, which turned out to be absolutely the love of my life.
Wow.
And that brings me, am I still okay on time?
Yeah, you're great.
Okay, so that brings me to mindfulness, because as I got to know teenagers and girls, and through girls, boys, because we would have dances and everything, and I'd do this business, and the boys would say, "Okay, we get it, Mrs. Mann." But anyway, so I began looking at them and listening to them and seeing them every day as I'd walk down the halls, as I'd greet them in the morning, as I'd see them in the afternoon, as I'd go in classes. And it wasn't that they weren't happy. It wasn't that the school wasn't premier, that they were learning, that they were getting into prestigious universities, that they were making millions and millions and millions of dollars in scholarships every year. But there was a tenseness that was, you could feel it, you could touch it, you could, and these girls, I honed it down to social media. And I said, this social media is for the birds, because they never escape it. They never get off their phones. They're constantly, if they're not on it, they're thinking about it. There was no escape. And that social media, whatever platform they were on, caused a lot of emotional problems. Parents would never even know. Teachers would never even know. But some of the stories that kids told me were so heartbreaking, because the self-image of a teenage girl, and it's not just in high school, it's in elementary school. It's in
Yes.
6th grade. It's in 5th grade. It reaches down to 3rd and 4th grade now.
Yeah.
And I see little kids with their phones in 2nd grade. And parents do the very best they can. They really do. I truly believe that. But good kids are really good at covering up. And so that's when I started talking to a guy named Fred Stinchcomb, who was a teacher at my school. And he said, hey, I got an idea. They always came in with, hey, I got an idea. And I'd go, let's hear it. Sounds good. Because like children, teachers need to know you're behind them and you're going to try new things. He said, I do a program called Mindfulness. I said, tell me what it's like. He told me, I said, oh, that's like guided imagery. I did that 30 years ago. And he said, well, sort of, but not really. And I said, because I didn't like guided imagery too much. And we were in a Catholic school, so I had to bring faith of not the Catholic faith, but any faith into this. And he said, it's just breathing. I said, well, that's cinchy. And I said, take me through a session. And he did. Breathing, just stopping to breathe and turning off in whatever way you can. And breathing is the signal for that. Just breathe in and breathe out. And I know there's a commercial on TV now, Calm. For 15 seconds, just breathe. I thought, yeah, I could have saved you a whole lot of money, or made a lot of money.
Right.
But anyway, so we did that. We did that school-wide. Kids are now doing it in college because college is more than stressful these days. How do you get away from that stress for a minute?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. You could be just getting in your car, ready to turn it on, and just go. And you would be surprised how you calm down. Mm-hmm. Now, when I breathe in, I say a prayer, and when I breathe out, I say a prayer. So I've incorporated it that way. Well, comes to retirement, and I didn't want to retire. I don't think I ever wanted to retire, but I really loved what I was doing most of the time. But there came a time that was quite stressful in my board and administration, and I had a different view of where to take Padua and how to take Padua than they did. And so I said, well, I can't do more. And the priest said, you can't. And so I'm firing you. Well, now, I only had stellar. So I couldn't believe it. Is this how I'm going to leave 40 years in education by being fired because I don't agree with a financial policy? And, but you have to stick to what you believe in and what's right. Well, don't you know those little girls stood up for me and went on strike?
I didn't hear that.
Out. Oh, yeah. It was everywhere.
My goodness.
Somebody called me up and said, Cindy, turn on your television.
Oh,
you'll see all of the Padua girls standing outside. Cindy. And the teachers and parents. And so they hired me back.
How long was that? How long were you all fired and then they hired? Or was it
2 weeks? Yeah.
Wow.
And they hired me back. And
wait, hold on. What's the feeling of seeing your name in the newspaper? That has got to be the most like, I think I just want to die when that happens.
Well, I knew I was doing the right thing. I believed in what I was doing. And so it wasn't, and I had an excellent lawyer. So he was really managing a lot of that stuff for me because I couldn't do it. But it was hard. It was hard to go through, very hard to go through that.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I did. I did through prayer, and I did through breathing, and I did through knowing who I know who you are and what you stand for and what's important to you. And if you let that go, you've lost a big part of yourself that you can never get back. And that brings a lot of other feelings with it. So I was going to be poor. I knew I was going to be poor, but I was going to be happy. Anyway, I went back, and I went back for 2 years, but my health just crumbled because I had had major heart surgery and blah, 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 blah. So I did retire, but I retired on my terms. And so then you go, okay, you've had this career, and it could be any career. It could be in a medical field. It could be, anything. You've had a career. You've been in a public eye. You've been moving and grooving for 40 years. And now all of a sudden you're home.
Right.
Well, that just, and not only was I home, but I was home in a sick kind of way. My heart was just, I needed to rest. I just needed to rest. And so I would take these walks out in White Clay Creek. And then one day I just sat on this bench, and this is the God's honest truth. I sat on a bench looking at White Clay Creek, and I said, why am I not feeling relaxed? Why am I, God, here I am talking to you, but I'm not really relaxed. Breathe, Cindy, breathe, breathe. And I sat there, and I remembered to breathe. And as I would take in a breath, I would take in, take out garbage, take in the beauty of White Clay Creek, take out all the worries, all the fixed income worries, all the everything. And I have grown ever since then. I still go to White Clay Creek. I still walk. I still sit on that bench. But now I'm seeing much more of God's beauty. I am seeing, even today, it's so beautiful out there in the fog. And I tend to want to be outside a lot more because I'll tell you, 1 year, and you know this, I worked so many hours and so hard, I literally missed a whole season. I turned around in my car and I'm going, it's winter. I missed fall. I missed the changing leaves because you leave early in the morning, you get home late at night. So now I'm enjoying all that. And it's all about breathing.
So let's go back to that moment you were sitting on the bench, and I can just hear maybe someone listening to this saying, yeah, my life is this, that, and the other, which isn't so great right now. And she's just saying that she just breathed and something changed, and it's been great ever since. Why can't I get that for myself? What if someone's listening to you and going, it can't be that easy? Can you go back to just highlight a little closer, go in a little bit closer? What would you say to that person sitting there right now to help them understand what that shift was for you, or what it really took to get from there to here?
Took a whole lifetime to get from there to here. It took a lot of crisis to get from there to here. It took a lot of living. However, when you make a decision and you say, I'm going to choose happiness, I am not going to choose poor, pitiful me. Yeah, it stinks to live on a fixed income. It really does. I mean, I'm a shopper. And now with COVID, are you kidding? You know, I have White Clay Creek. That's what I got. But I can find now beauty, and I look for beauty. I don't look for anything else. I look for a connection with people, because people are, yeah, you run into some real not nice people. Yesterday, I will tell you that I broke all the rules and went to Marshall's. I had a mask, I had everything on, but I went to Marshall's. I couldn't stand it.
And how did that feel?
Oh, it felt great. And I
was there a lot of really great things out there? Was it just fun to like look around, right?
Yeah.
It's always so inspiring and beautiful.
I know. And I took my cart down, and this woman was coming up, and she said, "You're going the wrong way."
Excuse me for living.
What terrible word I thought of her at that time. I said, "I'm so sorry. How do you know I'm going the wrong way?" She said, "Don't you see the circles?" I didn't see this. I thank you so much for pointing them out. I wanted to take my cart and ram it right into hers. I really did. And for a second, I did think about that, because I could have done it as I turned, but I didn't. Anyway, so I just went back to having fun, because it's a choice, and you can choose happiness or not happiness. Yeah. You can choose faith or not faith. You can choose breathing or not breathing. You can choose friends or not, isolation, or even like we're doing now. We're together, but I've never met you and in person, but I feel like I know you.
I know, like I told you, I read your blog and invited you on this podcast, and I said, and if you decline, I am totally fine with that, because I obviously don't know you, and I'm just reaching out saying, hey, can I interview you? But from reading your blog post, I know I put an email, I was like, I felt like I made a friend. I feel like I know you just because of how open and vulnerable you were in that post. And it was just, it really.
And I think that's one of the things that you have to be. You have to be open. You can't keep things close to you and not let them go. You have to be open and vulnerable. I like that word, vulnerable. You have to learn how to do that. You have to learn how to take a risk. You have to say, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to be friendly to that witchy person that wasn't nice to me in Marshall's, but I'm going to take a risk and not counter her rudeness with my own rudeness. Yeah. Kill them with kindness. Or we have I'm from the South, and we have an expression that says, well, bless your heart. Bless your heart, you think is sweet. It's not. It's like, you stupid person, you out of my way, but bless your heart. And one teacher said to another teacher, I was in the lounge, and she said, never let her say, bless your heart.
Oops. Because we know the real meaning behind it. But it leaves you with a blessing.
Yes.
I'll leave you on a positive note. So for any of the listeners who might not have heard 2 of my previous episodes, so I interviewed Ryan Shelton because I had found, actually he reached out to me because he saw a mindfulness quote that someone had put in the newspaper. And I told him about, starting, teaching some mindfulness lessons at school. And that's when I read your article. That was probably last spring. And so just recently I had him on for an interview, which was just fabulous and incredible. When it comes out, I'll definitely share it with you. Well, then he invited 2 of the seniors at Padua. So we just interviewed them and their story about mindfulness, which was also so exciting. And I had so much fun getting to know them. And so for those of you who are listening, if you go back a couple podcasts, you'll see the Ryan Shelton one and the 2 seniors from Padua one. And so to have you on here is just so super special. And for those of you listening, Cindy wrote an article, and she titled it "Breathing Helped Me Transition into Retirement." And so that was why I invited her on today. And I'm looking at my questions that I wanted to ask you because you've answered so many of them. So just give me a minute, because I just loved, if any of our listeners don't read your article, which I'll put in the link to in the description below. But let me see what you.
Well,
I
I would
love.
say that breathing helps you let go. So it helps you let go of one life and enter into another life. And that's really what retirement is. It's
Yes.
letting go of your professional life and into another life that could be professional. It could be anything you want to make it.
And if you're holding on to that, you're saying you might not be released to actually embrace what's new. It's almost like you can't have a foot in the past and have something open up in the future. Like you're like really saying like that's so important. Can you say
Right.
that one more time for us?
You cannot you can't have two lives going this way. You've got to let go of that old life. And that's very hard to do.
Yeah, as hard as that sounds, easy
Because
to
your whole
say.
self-esteem is tied up in that. You have to find a new way. And I would say, give yourself time, get some friends that see eye to eye with you on this. But breathe and be quiet. Let your brain stop and be quiet. There's a passage, be quiet, know I am God. No matter what your religion is or not, be quiet. That's it.
And I love how you, I'm going to quote from your article. You said that sitting on the bench in that park, you decided to take off the path of feeling sorry for yourself and walk towards the new adventure of the fresh life within you. And I so appreciate you just sharing that with us. That is just a thought, like Louise Hay says, and I've learned that over the years. It's just a thought, and a thought can be changed. So I'm going to change that thought, like right now. And how Mel Robbins calls it the 5-second rule, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, switch. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm getting out of bed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm letting that thought go. All right, I'm thinking a different thought. That's not serving me. It's not.
That's right.
What's best for me right now. And it really is just a thought, and a thought can be changed. And that sounds so simple and so like kindergarten level. But when I read that, I was like, wait, that's so true. That's so powerful.
If it wasn't COVID now, which is the double punch for the people that are retiring, but if it wasn't COVID and I didn't have all the heart conditions I have, I would be probably in Walgreens working. I mean, to be with people, there are so many things you can do to feed the energies that you had at work, but translate into a new job.
Yes. And so what do you do when, say, you hear those fearful, depressing thoughts want to creep back in? Or what do you have to say to people who might be like, wow, I was on such a high, I changed my thoughts, I was on a great path, and oh man, because we all get them, we're human, they're sitting right there, we just choose not to engage in that thought. What's your advice on when they do start creeping back?
Yeah, and they do. We're all human, and I have my off days, and what I do is go outside. I mean, for me, that I'm close to God when I'm outside. When I've got walls around me, nah, not so much. Not church, not anywhere, but church is my outside, and I've got a little grandson, and we go walking in the rain. We do crazy things.
I love that.
But I can do that now because I'm older.
Yes.
And people just say, look at that little old lady with her grandson. Yeah, and I go, I don't care. I'm having fun.
I'm having fun. I love life. Life loves me.
Have fun and kick those doldrums.
Yeah.
I think it's just, you don't have time for that.
No,
We
that's a
have
great way to
limited
put it.
time, and I know
Life's
my
too
time is
short.
limited. But
So live every
I'm gonna
day
live
to
every
the
second.
fullest.
Yeah.
So before we end with, I love the quote from Joan Chittister that you put on your blog
Yeah.
post. So I'm going to end with that. And right before I end with that, if there's a mom listening who has a child with special needs and is there, they can be such a handful and it can be
Yeah.
frustrating. They can feel helpless, hopeless at times.
Yeah.
From all your years of experience, what word of encouragement could you leave that listener with today?
Well, I would say reach out to others, reach out to your support group. To I have a granddaughter who's autistic, and so it takes a family. It takes a family, and my husband and I, when we first found out Catherine was autistic, we read every book on autism. We did everything. We wanted to put her, because we were losing her. She was losing speech. She would, you'd try to touch her and she'd wipe the touch and she'd just cry for hours and hours. So you ended up not touching her. And that was not a good thing to do. But I would say find your support group, find a friend, find a college student that could give you some respite time, know what your rights are so far as having respite, having getting some time away, because you have to have some rest. You have to get time away from this little child, and because you lose your perspective after a while. But that's what I would say. It's very hard. It
Yeah,
is.
it's
Get
a lot
close
of
to your
work.
teachers, and they can help you get to different places. But you need to be an advocate for your child through the educational system. And if you feel you cannot be an advocate, there are people that will volunteer to help that process for you, to ask the questions that maybe you don't know. I mean, I was an advocate for my daughter, for my granddaughter, for her life. But her mother has become very strong in knowing what Catherine's rights are, because they're vulnerable. They don't know. They can't help themselves.
And sometimes when you're tired and worn out, you might not even have the strength or the energy to be able to ask the right
You
questions that
don't.
on a normal day you probably would know. And that's what that support of another objective person brings, I think, in a very powerful
Right.
way to the table. And sometimes things are misconstrued and they're said one way, and the team sitting there just feels a certain
Exactly.
way, and we lose it in translation. And sometimes that objective person can just share it with that non-bias, subjective point that is
Totally
really, let's
agree.
talk about what's in the best interest of the kids. All
Yeah.
emotions aside, how can we best help support and feel supported as the educators, and help the parent feel supported?
Once I found out that Catherine, and she was about 2 when we had her diagnosis, but I started going through every IEP meeting I ever had for emotionally handicapped kids. And I was thinking, did I feel enough for this parent?
Wow.
Was I kind enough to this parent? Or did I just say, here's the IEP, here's what we're going to be working on, and okay, your time is up. But so there are people like this in the education. They're kind, they're good, they want the best for your daughter or son. Find them.
And thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. For any educator who might be listening to this podcast episode and they have their hands full with the challenges,
Do
and
they
even
ever?
regular ed kids can,
Oh,
kids are
drive you crazy.
kids. We all get to the point of being frustrated, or,
Sure.
as much as we show up and give 100%, and we got in this because we love the kids.
Yeah.
What's one word of encouragement you can leave with the educators listening that, hey, when you're in the thick of all this, just remember this?
Just remember that you're not superhuman, but we think you are.
Good
You
point.
can do the best you can do, but at some point you're going through a pandemic. and you're teaching on 2 platforms, virtual. And I observe my grandson, he's in the 1st grade now. That teacher is standing on her head all the time because she's got the kids at the seat, she's got the kids in front of her, and she's trying to monitor both and keep them on track.
Absolutely.
It's impossible.
I tell them they do a miracle every day. Every day what you're doing is a miracle. There's nothing natural about this. There's nothing normal about this. My hat goes off to them. They are my number one heroes right now. Anything I can do to support them, I'm like, my hands, my hat goes off to you, and you've got all my...
I pray for them every day because
yes,
they are in harm's way every day with this coronavirus.
Unbelievable.
So I just think that if they know how, parents need to understand what miracle workers they are with their kids. And I think they do after the time at home that they've had to try to teach. I mean, how do you do that? And one of the best quotes from my grandson's teacher, this was all virtual at the time, and he was working, and she would take groups, pods, and say, okay, I want blah, 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 blah to come, and I will view your work while others are blah, 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 And so she said, and Marie, is that your sister standing next to you? And Marie said, yes. And she said, sister, you need to go in another room now. You cannot do Marie's work for her, okay? I'm watching you leave the room now.
You have to say that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're not just teaching your kid, you're teaching the kid's sibling to do a move where they need to be as well.
So I think
my gosh,
principals are, everybody in the education field now is just superior.
Yeah, absolutely. They are creating the path that has never been created. Yeah. And I love how someone said recently that I interviewed, a pandemic means you create the way as you live it. And that's exactly what we're doing. As much as we hate it, we're like, but somebody tell me how to do this. And we're frustrated that the manual is in my hands and I'm writing it as we wake up every day.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Help us all. All right. So I want to end with this quote. If anybody doesn't read the article that you wrote, because I just think it's really beautiful. So in her book, The Gift of Years, Joan Chittister says, it is fear of getting older that plagues us. Instead of seeing a long life as a gateway to the flowering of the spirit, the growing of the soul, we are far more likely in a culture geared toward movement and dexterity, physical beauty and public achievement, to see it as the coming of a wasteland. And so I'll just end with reminding us that our lives, which you have shown us in this brief time of a picture today, thank you, Cindy, is a gateway to the flowering of the spirit. So we are all in the process of growing our soul, and that is just so beautiful. And I just enjoyed every word you shared with us today, and it just warms my heart, and I hope it warms the heart of every listener listening along. And I can't wait to have you back on, because I'm sure there's something else fun that we'll come up with to talk about in the future. But thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed every second.